Hello and welcome back to this damnful idealistic crusade. This will be another book review, again, of a newish James Bond reference title, a work of nonfiction about the James Bond film series. And this is a book I wanted to read as soon as I heard it was announced, not only because of the subject matter, but because of the author who already wrote one of the most essential works of James Bond nonfiction. That, of course, is Robert Sellers, who wrote the essential Battle for Bond, which is about the making of Thunderball, the entire backstory of the legal court case, and really gives you the entire blow by blow account of the story of the development of the Thunderball story between Fleming and Kevin McClory and Jack Whittingham, and the involvement of Ernest Cuneo and Ivar Bryce, just the whole 9 yards. So this already is one of the most essential books ever about Bond that isn't one of the original Fleming texts. So when it was announced that Robert Sellers was going to do another Bond book about the partnership relationship and the back history of Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, I was like, sign me up. It came out in the UK a little over a year ago, and then the US version finally came out. So I picked this up and I devoured this thing in one sitting. So this is When Harry Met Cubby, which is again about the relationship and the formation of the Eon partnership between Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman. And while this is going over a lot of information that most Bond fans and diehards will already know, it's never been put into a single context before to where you can get the entire story. There's a really great section at the start. There's a whole, essentially, mini biography of Harry Saltzman and one for Cubby Broccoli for the first few chapters. Each one takes up a few chapters, and then they both converge at the point of forming the partnership, going in on a deal to make Bond together, and eventually starting with Dr. No after making the United Artists deal. So essentially, this book is sort of a biography for both Broccoli and Saltzman up to 1960, 1961, and then discussing the making of each film and the various side projects and things, and then how the partnership grew with success at first, and then ultimately started to deteriorate until it got to the point where they really couldn't work with each other. They started alternating who took the lead producing role on different films, and then the book starts to wind down when the partnership breaks up, and it goes into really great detail about how that worked legally and how it was very difficult, and exactly why Saltzman decided to sell out to his shares to United Artists, which is really what has caused the ongoing issues legally, because the film series is thus tied still to a studio that has had continual financial problems, because of course United Artists was engulfed into the MGM craziness that really started in the 1970s, and so that's why the film series is still tied to MGM, when of course originally Saltzman had sold his shares to United Artists. So it's pretty much after that point, it really winds down. There's a little bit of material about Broccoli and Saltzman's lives after the breakup in 1975. But this book is not about then, how the rest of the series went. It's pretty much about how their partnership came together, who these two men were, trying to get into more detail, and then how they hit such great success, and then eventually, couldn't really work with each other anymore after a certain point. And what I appreciated most about this was the amount of character detail about each that you really don't often get. You get general ideas, but usually Cubby is known as being the very personable, very hands-on producer who knows everyone's name in the cast and crew and everybody loves. Whereas Harry is known as the wilder, more boisterous ideas man, the one who come up with 1,000 crazy ideas that he would have to get talked out of, but then 10 of them were absolutely genius, as people would say. And of course, Cubby Broccoli was dedicated to the Bond films and realized, this is what he wanted to do, and he stuck with it. Whereas Harry Saltzman, you couldn't keep him focused on one thing at the same time. He would want to be doing 10 or 15 other things, and he had all these side projects and all these other business ventures, which of course is eventually what led to the final breakup and why he had to sell his shares of the Bond series, because he had gotten into way too many ill-advised business dealings and trying to buy Technicolor and all this other stuff. But I feel Saltzman's role has unfortunately sort of been marginalized to an extent. He doesn't get mentioned as much, and it's not that it was really intentional or anything. It just happens over time. But his spirit, his sort of brashness, there's an energy that he had that I think is a key factor of what made the Bond films so special. And I think that after he left, you can really feel that difference. And of course, the last film he was involved in was The Man with the Golden Gun. So really, it's the first 9 films of the series that have that, if you wanted to call it a Saltzman touch, maybe I guess you could. And of course, really starting on You Only Live Twice, they started alternating. And that's another thing. If you look at the films that, each producer took the reins on, the ones that Cubby Broccoli did are the more lavish, they're the more, they're richer, and they have the big sets, and they have all of the globe trotting and stuff. But they don't have the same gritty focus on story and narrative, whereas the 2 films that Harry produced as the lead producer actually do. And I always wondered why that was, and I had no idea for the longest time about how they would alternate films. But when you really look at it, there is a stylistic difference, and it's very strange to consider that while Saltzman was considered the wild ideas man, his focus always seemed to be on stronger story and character. And so the 2 films he produced, which were On Her Majesty's Secret Service and Live and Let Die, and I shouldn't say produced, but I should say lead produced, because it wasn't that the other person would just sit at the office and not do anything. They would alternate who was on set and who took the reins, basically, because they figured that was the only way they can still work with each other and not kill each other, which was smart. But of course, it's sad to see a partnership, devolve to that point. But so if you look at those films and you compare them to You Only Live Twice and Diamonds Are Forever and The Man with the Golden Gun, which were the ones that Cubby Broccoli took lead producing roles on, there is an interesting sort of stylistic difference between these films, and that's all seemingly down to the fact that the different producers sort of took lead roles on the different films. So this is a really fantastic book. Again, I pretty much read it in one sitting. I couldn't stop. And what I really liked was that of course, it uses some sources that if you're a diehard like me and you listen to the commentaries all the time and you read the books over and over and you read the nonfiction books over and over, you'll be familiar with a lot of this material. But what I did appreciate was all the new material and the new interviews and things that are new in this volume, or hadn't really been republished a lot. I like that Sellers really tried to get a fully dimensionalized portrait of each man. So, there are people who talk about their good sides and their bad sides, and try to, overall, the book takes a very objective viewpoint, which I really appreciated, because you hear all this, all the crazy stories about Salzman, and you hear that Cubby Broccoli was the more level-headed one of the pair, but everybody's human. Everybody has their own foibles and quirks and things. So I really found it so rewarding that this book tried to really be fully objective and allow the various interviewees and the materials gained in research and everything. This is the first time I think that there's been such a beautifully fully realized portrait of each of the James Bond producers, who are so incredibly important and really did it themselves, because they were partnered with United Artists, who basically were at the time in that guise, under the lead of Krim and Benjamin and the Pickers, was probably the greatest movie studio that ever existed. Where you could go in, and as they did on Doctor No, the entire deal for James Bond was concluded with a handshake. There was no paper agreement, because United Artists, their word was their bond. And so there's a really great anecdote reprinted in here. It's been repeated sometimes, but Harry Saltzman was so freaked out that they had nothing on paper. He insisted Cubby had to go back and get something on paper because otherwise, they could just pull the deal because there was nothing in writing. So and Cubby tried to explain, like, this is United Artists. They don't do that. If they tell you yes, you shake hands. That's it. And Harry's like, no, we got to get something on paper. So Cubby has to go back and be like, so I don't want to go in hand in hand and basically ask for something in paper and basically say, Harry wants something in writing. So again, I love the fact that you finally get more, of a viewpoint of these two, legendary figures as real people. And there is a good section on each about their time post 1975. So this book is fantastic. It has I showed it a minute ago. It has the nice still section in the center. It's a nice hardbound volume, very, very sturdy. So it's definitely worth your time. If you're a fan of the films at all and you're interested in the production history, it's a must. And I really appreciated the detailed early years biography sections on each. So there's wonderful stuff about Broccoli's days with war films and the sort of formulation of the early key core Bond team members. And there's fantastic stuff about Harry Saltzman's early days, what they did during the war, how they wound up in England in the 1950s, how they started producing films. Cubby started in Hollywood. It talks a little bit about his early relationship with Howard Hughes. It talks about Harry's days in World War II. It talks about Harry's, early producing efforts and how he got into basically producing some of the iconic, groundbreaking, kitchen sink realism dramas of British films. So it's just a fantastic work. Again, a good amount of this information is out there in various places, and if you look at the official documentaries on the DVDs and stuff, they talk about Cubby and Harry and their stuff about it, but nothing ever in this amount of detail. And again, the best part is that you really get a sense of what each person was like, and how it must have been really fantastic when the partnership was really working, how they sort of sparked off each other and, had qualities that the other did not have, and how much of a shame that this partnership, couldn't last. There's probably no way it could last because they were so diametrically opposed to one another in temperament and outlook and everything. But I think that dynamism, that complete yin and yang of different sides, really made for something special, and that was part of the secret, part of the magic of the core Bond film value, and what made them so special. That you didn't have just one producer, you had two producers who were completely different from one another. So this book, Robert Sellers, really did a fantastic job. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's a fantastic companion piece to his Battle for Bond. So yes, very highly recommended for all Bond fans everywhere. Now, I will actually be doing a giveaway for this because I ordered this from Amazon, and they accidentally wound up sending me 2 copies, and then just didn't want me to return the other one, so I figured I would repay the favor. And so anyone who is watching who wants to potentially win a free copy of this book, When Harry Met Cubby, simply leave a comment on the video below, and I will draw a randomly selected winner. Of course, this is unfortunately limited to U.S. residents only, because international shipping is very expensive and stuff. But if you're interested and you're in the U.S., just leave a comment below, and I will select a winner in about a week or so. So thanks so very much for watching, and if you haven't checked this book out, please check this out. And also, you have to get a copy of Battle for Bond, which is just essential as well.